teams.
Yep, and with the 905 changes, there's new locations for the lanterns, longer duration for the buff, longer duration to get those buffs as well. Lots of pressure on these teams to be able to perform. A lot of room for min-max here. Let's see what they got as Obey Alliance and Golden Guardians are squaring off in game number 1 here in Sanguine.
All right, I'm interested to see how they are going to be dealing with the necrotic for this first pull. All right, so neither. Okay, so actually there is a difference in what's actually going on here. Skylark for Obey Alliance is not using that bop. Oh gosh, whereas on the side of the Golden Guardians, they actually are using that. Oh, okay, that's interesting.
The alter time.
So they bopped Fired Up, and Fired Up was pulling all of those mobs, and then he altered time all the way back. Yoda almost dies. First global of those mobs meleeing him. He dropped so incredibly low there.
Yodo's under so much threat. You can see that Darkness Legendary actually pop there. That's something that he's running. A little bit of a strange choice, or a different choice than a lot of the other tanks have been making, but it looks really strong here as there's all that AoE damage coming out as well. There's actually so many good Vengeance Demon Hunter legendaries as well, and this, I think, is a really great dungeon to break out that Darkness proc one, and you can see things have actually worked out very well for Golden Guardians here. Their strategy led to those mobs getting grouped up so quickly, and yeah, they had to use Bop, they had to use Ice Block, they had to use a bunch of different cooldowns to make that happen, but you know what? It got that pull done about 15 seconds faster than Obey Alliance, who, it looks a little bit safer, but also slower. So I think Golden Guardians looking good so far as they are getting started with their second pull. There are quite a lot of mobs here. Let's see if they've got actually the entire balcony out here. Looks like they're still kind of moving forwards. I don't... Oh, actually, this is all the trash. Yeah, so this will be a pull up to 20%. Oh, no, it's not. There's still some up ahead of them. So not a 3-pull strategy for them, whereas Obey Alliance are going to be getting started now with all of the trash up to the boss. Shakib dropping really low. Yoda really low. Doesn't have access to that Darkness Legendary. Still has a Last Resort. He's going to have it procced for him right now, so he does not have that cheat death effect available anymore.
Did you catch what Obey Alliance did? Obey Alliance did one singular tick there for a second. They had to kill off that one mob. Obey Alliance, interestingly enough, hasn't used their Bop at all for Skylark to group up anything. Bop definitely is one of the most potent abilities at being able to get the mobs grouped up without having your tank get like super high on stacks. Obviously, they do have a lot of tools to be able... Both comps have a lot of tools to be able to deal with stuff like that. They do have the trees. They have the Blessing of Protection. Both of these tanks are playing Kyrian, so that have that Kyrian file. Obey Alliance, though, being able to double pull this room and dealing with that extremely quickly is an absolute delight to see, and it's going to save them a lot of time just over the course of the whole entire dungeon. Something that's also interesting for Obey Alliance is typically Chompy is the Moonkin player of the group. So Chompy has had to learn Shadow Priest, and so now 40 has had to learn Balance Druid just to be able to deal with some of these Shadow plus Balance comps. That's definitely an adaptation that Obey Alliance has had to have multiple parts actually move, whereas for Golden Guardians, Lip knows how to play Boomy. So Shakib was the only one who had to learn how to play that Shadow Priest.
Yeah, look at this damage that's coming out here from Lip with that Convoke onto the boss. Incredible burst there. Still actually had some of the Pride buff for them. However, Golden Guardian's Pride is going to be falling off sooner because they spawned it before the trash pull.
Yeah.
And so Obey Alliance are going to have a little bit more uptime of the Pride on this boss. They are going to be killing the boss first. But if you look at the trash percentage here, Golden Guardians have found an extra 5%. They've done 3 pulls rather than 2 plus a tick, but they've gotten 5% more counts. Yeah, so 3 plus 2 versus 2.1 for Obey Alliance is Yoda once again popping that Darkness. This is actually going to be a value Darkness, though. Will provide some utility for the entire group as they have that damage coming out. Skylark on the other side is running that Fell Devastation legendary, the newly buffed one that gives you a 40% chance to refresh or reset the cooldown whenever you use Fell Devastation. You can see tanks using that and chaining just Fell Devastation after Fell Devastation if they get some fortunate procs, and that can lead to really high meta uptime, but it's unreliable, right? Whereas the Darkness Legendary on the side of Yoda, it's not that kind of powerful, massive effect that the potential chaining of Fell Devastation can be, but it is guaranteed to happen anytime that he might be about to die if it's not on cooldown, right? It's reliable, it's predictable, and it is especially likely to be there when he needs it, rather than being equally likely to happen on a dangerous versus not dangerous pull. So I actually really love that legendary choice that Yoda has made. versus Skylark there. And you can see both teams now making their way through this trash area. Obey Alliance are going to finish off their pull something like 20 seconds ahead of the Guardians, which is about the total time gap between them on the first boss as well. 0 deaths so far, but now it's going to be a tricky part of the dungeon. Obey Alliance making their way towards that second Venthyr lantern here. Let's see what they can pull.
It's okay, so they're not grabbing the Acolytes into this lantern. So earlier today we saw PI Me do this, except they also did this plus the Acolytes on top of it. They notably moved this lantern here in Sanguine Depths to be able to... I actually don't know why they moved this lantern, but they moved the lantern
so that it wasn't going to be near that patrolling
Sentinel.
gargoyle. Yeah, exactly. And so they moved it here, which it's a power increase for some strategies, and it definitely reduces the chance of accidentally pulling that patrol. But it does make it a little bit harder to do that thing where you'd activate it through the wall of the other room. And so yeah, you can see this is going to be the plan.
I don't hate this. I wish they could have done the Acolytes with the pack, but this is the second best thing, is doing the Acolytes just with the lantern by itself. And so
Golden Guardians, meanwhile, also fighting here. It looks like they may have already activated their lantern.
It looks like they have, yeah.
Yeah, and so they're going to be spawning their Pride now. The Pride is spawning behind them. I wonder if they're going to be trying to skip this. No, they're not. So yeah, their lantern is already activated. Let's see what they're going to do with it. It looks like it's just about finished its duration now.
Do you like this for Al?
It's interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting difference between these two teams. I think Obey Alliance are going to be able to parlay this lantern into higher uptime than the Guardians are with their pathing. But they had to do a little bit of awkward fighting of relatively small pulls. Whereas Golden Guardians, you can see that they've done a really good job here of actually slingshotting ahead of where Obey Alliance are. And right now we can see they're at the exact same percentage as each other, but Golden Guardians have already finished off this Pride. So, I mean, you have to give the advantage at this point to Golden Guardians. They're ahead by that one metric where there's a difference between the teams.
Time?
I mean, yes, they're at the same account. Although we're seeing once again a divergence now between the teams as Obey Alliance are scooting on ahead, grabbing this mini boss, whereas Golden Guardians are now on this big pull that contains some trash that Obey Alliance had already dealt with. Golden Guardians finishing off their pull a little bit sooner here. They are up to 51% count. They're going to be skipping this mini-boss that Obey Alliance have chosen to kill. So completely different having throughout the first part of this dungeon between these two teams. Golden Guardians are now on their way to that next lantern. I think that it's too late for them to refresh their old lantern buff. I don't think that's something that's super realistic for them here. So what they'll probably be trying to do is build up a new one and then refresh it with the fourth lantern of the dungeon on the other side of the ring.
You do see that still, the glowing red effect on the members of Obey Alliance. So it shows that they still have it. Oh no, it's a prideful. That's actually the prideful one. It's not even the lantern buff.
One of the many joys of this season.
Where are they gonna make up counts is what I'm trying to figure out here. And I think it's more likely than not Obey Alliance ends up pulling that hallway pack and Golden Guardians probably doesn't. Because the only alternative is that Golden Guardians pulls less in this Executive Tarvald area, which I guess they could. It would seem weird to me.
We've seen a couple of bats getting pulled by some teams in the final boss gauntlet as well. That's a possibility. Yoda is indeed under a lot of pressure here.
Okay,
He's got to watch out.
The trees.
Trees provides a lot of defensive benefit, but he still does need to be so careful because he doesn't have that cheat death, that last resort available. His meta is down as well. I think his darkness proc is available if needed, although I'm not 100% sure on that one. So that is a little bit.
Obey Alliance definitely taking the lead here. Ooh, full moon coming in from 40.
Big
Obey Alliance
damage.
not respecting his convoke at all, forcing him to use it on the Pride, saying, 40, you were going to press it here.
It's always good to make your Moonkin just use their cooldowns on the Pride. Make everybody just use their cooldowns on the Pride.
Except for the
Get
mage.
that thing taken care of. Especially in this area, it's actually really important that these teams are able to get their pathing to those lanterns as fast as possible because you get such a huge damage benefit if you are able to refresh your stacks. On the next lantern. You can see Golden Guardians trying to do exactly that right now. They are running over to this next lantern. JB is going to open that up. Unfortunately gets zoned by one of those swirlies. He's going to have to dodge that. Does a great job of doing that though and opens up the lantern. They're now going to be able to kill a mob very quickly and get their stacks refreshed. Obey Alliance at basically the exact same point in the dungeon, have a little bit more trash count from their pull of that mini-boss so far. And you can see they're going to be using Ring of Frost to try and facilitate a nice big pull here. Lots of mobs getting grouped up. This is one of the strengths of Ring of Frost, is you can really use it to start your pull, especially on a bolstering setting, with all of the mobs in the same spot. rather than doing some damage to some of them as they are grouping up. Unfortunately, they're under
Skylark
a lot of
is so
attack
low.
here. Yeah, and Skylark, Chompy going down as well. Gets targeted by a bunch of abilities and is just going to die.
He got hit by the root bleed thing that murders you. I don't actually know the name of it.
Shape blow as well.
Okay, everybody's alive.
They're going to be just fine, it looks like. That is going to cost them one of their battle reses, but because we've just passed the 10-minute mark in the dungeon, the second battle res has become available for both teams. So that little bit of wiggle room is still available as long as it's not like 40 or Lip who dies, because then they would need to use the engineering res. Just as I mentioned, the battle res, though, Shakib is going to go down for Golden Guardians, and he is going to release. And oh no, Titles, I don't think this release is going to work out very well for them because it's such a long run back from here. And even though there's nothing in the way, this is going to cost them quite a bit of time. Even if they didn't have, even if they used a battle res here, I imagine that would have been less costly than this run back.
Would you describe that as a bad release, Bucko?
I would say that it's a release that reduces the chance of a catastrophic wipe at some point in the future. Because you have access to an extra battle res now, but it's a time costly, right? You're paying some time to gain some safety, and I'm not sure that's something you can afford to do against Obey Alliance. As you can see now, we have another death on the side of Golden Guardians. Lip himself goes down. He is also going to release. They are going to be able to finish off that massive bolstered scribe in the little small screen there. But that thing has a lot of bolstering stacks, and it has just been murdering people. The research has really been getting to them. It's
like those YouTube ads from years ago with the guy in the library.
Just getting books dropped on them.
It's the ultimate incarnation of that, just getting books through that.
Yeah, it's very, very reminiscent of my school days. Just completely overwhelmed by research. As the Golden Guardians are just about now on Executor Tarvald. They are almost a full boss now behind where Obey Alliance are, plus 10 extra seconds of death differential to their disadvantage. The one thing that's going for them is that extra battle res they have. If there are things that start going wrong for Obey Alliance, they only have that one res. So it is a little bit of a buffer, but it's not as much as Golden Guardians have. Golden Guardians will be able to recover from a more catastrophic wipe than Obey Alliance could, but there's not too much left in this dungeon. I'm not sure that they'll be able to make good use of those two battle reses in the short amount of time that's left in the dungeon, as Obey Alliance are now going to be getting started with a trash pull here. Looks like a pretty small trash pull. If I had to guess, I would say this will trigger the 80% pride, which they'll then bring onto the boss here.
No,
it doesn't.
This will be 79% because the oppressor's still patrolling.
Interesting. All right, so I'm curious as to why they're fighting these three by themselves. Yeah, you're absolutely right. They get up to 79%, and they're caging the last oppressor. So maybe they just killed these things off so that they'd have a little bit more space to grab the orbs in this area, and then they will trigger their pride right after the boss. We've seen teams have a couple different strategies for this part of the dungeon. We saw earlier, PI Me, they decided to just CC all of the mobs in this room and then pull them afterwards with the mobs in the little hallway up above. And that was a really powerful strategy that looked really strong from them, really saved a lot of time in this area. Obey Alliance, though, I think has a little bit of a safer plan here with clearing out that trash. Ooh, lots of dodging and damage coming out here, though.
I thought he actually got clipped by that circle. That was really close by 40 there. Cutting it really tight. But, I mean, honestly, though, Obey Alliance definitely have made their bolstering just looked a lot better. And so that's translated into a pretty substantial time gain. But Golden Guardians catching back up just a little bit, Ratnos.
Yeah, I mean, Golden Guardians have done a really good job of this. You know, when they pulled the second boss, it was at like 10% health for Obey Alliance. When they pulled the third boss, it was only at like 60% health for Obey Alliance. So if you extrapolate that forward, Golden Guardians might be able to just close this entire gap purely by damage, although, as I say, that 40 reaches back to his Convoke, and they are going to be getting some big burst damage on the boss here. So maybe with the cooldowns lining up the way that they are, Obey Alliance will actually be reopening this gap. It's pretty close, though, between these two teams. I mean, 40% for Golden Guardians as JB goes down. Oh, no, how did this happen? They do have a battle res for him, so they use one, and they still have another. That's going to cost them another 5 seconds, though, of death differential. Not too much else, though, other than that, as big damage is coming out from the Grand Proctor here. Look at what Obey Alliance is doing. They brought in this Wicked Oppressor towards the end of the boss fight, and this is going to trigger their 80% pride. Maybe they have designs on skipping this pride. Skipping prides has gotten a lot harder than it used to be. It is a lot trickier to make that invisibility potion work in patch 9.0.5 than in the previous patch. but it might still be doable. Let's see if Obey Alliance is able to pull it off, as they are getting very close here to this 80% Pride spawning.
Obey Alliance still needs trash. They need the hallway trash. It is part of it too. So like they're gonna play this, but I don't know what with. Okay, so Skylark has actually grabbed the shield. So Skylark has grabbed the shield. Basically, the deal with count here is if you have 80% before you walk into the Grand Proctor room, the third boss room, then you can skip all of the hallway trash and get perfect count for the rest of the dungeon, right? So you can get your 80% pride on Tarvald, which is the second boss, and then you can get 100% pride on Call, which is the last boss. But how Obey Alliance is doing it, their count was off a little bit to the point where they had to pull at least some of the trash that's in the hallway. And you saw Skylark pick up the shield to be able to mitigate a lot of the Pride pulsing AoE and just a lot of the melee swings that are occurring. And now you do see that Mind Soothe coming out. Really great ability coming in from the Priest, just to be able to have that great utility. You saw some door shadows being used to get over top those. What is the master?
Maybe that was just a preemptive mass res that you start casting in case that somebody's skip fails. Just a sort of precautionary measure, as they are now getting started with the General Call boss gauntlet here. With Necrotic, this section is pretty sketchy. As you can see, Skylark on 29 stacks. The Gargans don't actually give stacks to Necrotic anymore. That was a nerf that came in for this section of the dungeon several weeks ago, but every other mob does. However, when you use the shield from the Naru that you're carrying around in this area, during its duration, you prevent any application of new stacks of Necrotic, I believe. So I think that is something that they are using well as they're getting low on duration. And then combining that with the trees, they're actually able to pretty effectively drop Necrotic on demand once every minute or so with the combination of those abilities, as they are now making to the second of 3 Trash Gauntlet pulls. This is going to be one where they get access to that Venthyr Lantern. However, the Guardians are also on their Trash Gauntlet. They have just gotten started with the first of those 3 General Call trash pulls. So Obey Alliance have a lead here. They have a definite lead, but they don't have an insurmountable lead, as Golden Guardians are right there, right behind them, ready to capitalize on any mistake, or perhaps if they can find a way to deploy some ungodly amounts of damage or shave a pull off of the rest of this dungeon somehow, combine some pulls in a way that Obey Alliance can't, Golden Guardians could absolutely still take this game.
Yeah, I think that they can't take this game without a little bit of help from Obey Alliance, though.
Yeah, so I think if Obey Alliance executes the same pulls as Golden Guardians does, and does them without wiping or without serious problems, that's probably true. But it's possible that Golden Guardians will find a way to use this Venthyr Lantern buff and perhaps double pull the next 2 pulls afterwards. And if they're able to make something like that work, because Yoda drops incredibly low, that's going to proc his Darkness Legendary, and unfortunately he's forced to run out of the Darkness as well. That's the double whammy there. For Golden Guardians, as they are under a lot of pressure trying to make this pull happen. Obey Alliance have already finished that pull. They are making their way now on to General Call. They are also going to be adding this next trash pull as well, the Chamber Sentinel and the 2 Noble Skirmishers. This is a very sketchy pull. Skylark is under a lot of attack here. Cast 1 Fell Devastation, does not get the reset, does not get to cast another one. That is a pretty serious amount of survivability that he could have gained there had his legendary procs. But look at the damage that Shape and 40 are able to put out on this pull. They are just doing a tremendous amount of work. There is going to be the shield. That's going to prevent any new... Necrotic Sexton's Hollow gets knocked up by the Chamber Sentinel. Craggy
now Skylark's
Eruption.
stacking up Necrotic again, though. This is not great. They may have trees available for them in a couple of seconds, but you see Skylark frantically running away. All right, now his Necrotic stacks have dropped, which is...
And look at this. Skylark is going to run right into the next room, and he's going to get started pulling even that trash back into this trash.
He's not doing
so maybe
that.
he's going to fight it up in that room. Maybe he's just started the next pull up there. Okay, he just pulled one Gargan.
He just has 1 Gargan.
All right, sometimes you just fight 1 Gargan. Just to assert dominance, right? You want to get started.
Doing that.
All right. I saw the little marker moving up ahead and over to the right, and I was like, oh my goodness, there he goes. But there he did not go. His Fired Up is down for Golden Guardians.
JB's dead.
Follows right behind as well. They only have the 1 battle res. They are going to use it on JB and not Fired Up. Heads up play there by Fired Up, not accepting that res. Instead, they are directing that res onto JB so that they can keep their pull alive. But I fear that it may be too little too late for the Guardians, as Yoda goes down as well, and this entire pull is falling apart for them. They have tried to make a very ambitious pull work for them. It's absolutely what they needed to do to catch back up in this game against Obey Alliance, but it has not worked out for them, as that full team wipe is going to cost them. It's going to send them right back to the third boss room. Obey Alliance having no such difficulties. They are inching forward, fighting this final Prideful of the dungeon into the General Call arena. Looks like they aren't going to be attempting to start the boss fight during the Pride, but I'm excited to see how fast they're going to be able to melt this boss, because we saw this boss take something like 20 seconds. Here it comes. Here comes the Bloodlust. Here comes that Ashen Hollow. They don't have access to the Prideful buff yet, but now it comes out and they still have all their cooldowns. There's going to be the Celestial Alignment, the Convoke the Spirits. All of that damage from the Ashen Hollow is still going to be coming down as well. General Call 64% and dropping fast here. You can see Hollow on that Paladin, currently above 18,000 DPS, and I think that this will be from the start of the pull, which includes before the Pride buff, crests the 20k mark as General Call, just 5% health before this fight will be over. Chompy, 40 in shape, fighting for that second place slot. It is to no avail, though. Ashen Hollow on that healer is going to be the top damage on this fight, as they have just completely melted this boss. 20 minutes, 31 seconds. Great work by Obey Alliance taking this game 1.
What a world we live in.
Oh my goodness. Truly incredible performance by Obey Alliance. But you know what? It was a good run as well for Golden Guardians up until that final boss gauntlet. I think there were a lot of pulls that Golden Guardians were able to make work that looked pretty impressive, and I think their strategy looked very fast through the first part of the dungeon as well. I think there's a lot of good news there. Obviously, the end of the dungeon didn't quite work out for them, and they had a couple of hiccups in that ring area. But you know what? It was a good showing, and let's not overstate just how difficult bolstering Necrotic Sanguine Depths is. That is something that is remarkably hard, which just goes to underline the incredible achievement here of Obey Alliance.
Exactly.
I think it's important as well to note that, you know, this is a matchup that we saw 2 weeks ago as well, where Obey Alliance ended up taking out Golden Guardians in a 3-game series, but this was the map that Golden Guardians beat Obey Alliance on. So to see that Obey Alliance was able to come up with a strong enough strategy to get comfortable in this dungeon, just pretty good team development there.
Yeah, and Obey Alliance is the 3 seed versus 6 seed, so I guess this would be the predicted outcome. But I feel like our 3 versus 6 matchups have like largely gone 50-50 as to does the 6 seed end up taking it or not. I mean, honestly, I felt like Obey Alliance, a lot of their stuff with how they managed Necrotic too, not even just bolstering, but Necrotic management of, they were able to keep the mobs stacked up long enough and didn't have Skylark kite, where I felt like Golden Guardians had to kite just a little bit earlier than you would normally end up seeing from like that from Obey Alliance in particular, because Obey Alliance was actually able to get their trash pack dead quicker. Like you even saw them in the call gauntlet. That's why Yoda and JB and them died, is because their pack took, what is it, like 25 seconds, 35 seconds, even longer than that of the Obey Alliance. It was kind of a weird situation have happened. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and as we're taking a look at like how Obey Alliance, sorry,
Out of breath?
I had like, you know, couple very large packages. You guys are going to get some in the mail very soon as well. But Stratos, how would you start comparing, you know?
Me too, man, Jack.
I'll show you in a sec, okay? I'll show you in a sec. Go for it, buddy.
It's just such an exciting dungeon. Sometimes you really put yourself in those shoes of these teams, and really the physical exertion of playing at this level, it gets to us kind of secondhand, but it's still there. Really remarkable effect. And yeah, Obey Alliance looked so good there. However, I would not count out the Golden Guardians just yet. The remainder of this series contains some maps that I am pretty excited for the Guardians on as well. We've got the... Good?
I was gonna say, I think that they have some heavy lifting to do in this Mist of TIRNA Scythe, but I do think that they can absolutely rise to the occasion and run away with it if they do feel so inclined.
Lazaro, let's talk about how, you know, Obey Alliance started running away with this one. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I don't think Obey Alliance did nothing too spectacular, right? They went for similar pulls to Golden Guardians. I think the big thing is that Golden Guardians fell back into that sort of mentality that we've seen from previous MDIs, where teams go for massive pulls, and if it works out, they win, and if it doesn't, they lose. I mean, they started off with this double pull into the first lantern, which went great for them, but then they go for another massive pull here at the end of their buffs, where they have, I think, 3 scribes in there. Things aren't stacked together, and one of the biggest problems with things not being stacked in bolster and necrotic is you're going to end up having a massive scribe, which will just start one-shotting people. In addition to that, Shakib kind of rage released at some point in the middle of that pack, so he had to run back, and they were 2 DPSing, you know, Giga bolstered scribe. So it was like it wasn't incompetence that lost Golden Guardians that game. It was being a little bit too confident and going for bigger pulls than they probably should have when they had a lead.
Yeah, and as we start setting our sights here on Mists for our next matchup here, Tettles, very, very different dungeon, very different affixes that they got to be worrying about. What do you think is going to be the big thing that we'd be looking for from Golden Guardians saying this?
It's interesting because they've changed a lot about how this dungeon ends up working. They patched up some of the holes.
Well,
they patched up.
Okay.
They patched up one hole. They patched up the hole at the very beginning where you're not able to pull the 4-pack into the 2-pack.
You still can. When Blizzard
pets.
closes one window, they open another sometimes.
What is the other window that's open?
If you send a pet through, you can still grab those 4 extra mobs and bring them in with the first 2. So, however, that would require a pet class to be used. You could potentially do it with a mind control, something like that. A dominant mind control might work out, although I imagine that wouldn't last from the first boss. So maybe something like a hunter pet. We do sometimes see hunters in this dungeon. We don't always, though, especially in this new meta. We might see something like just the mage, the boomkin, the shadow priest instead, in which case they wouldn't have an easy way to necessarily do it. So might or might not be something that we see because, like you said, yeah, that window has been closed to like line of sight pull the 4 mobs from the right-hand room right at the start of the maze.
Yeah, we'll have to see what these teams have in store, as a lot of routes and a lot of ease of access for dealing with the maze was built off the back of being able to turn 1 pull or 2 pulls into 1 in a lot of cases here, Zyro. And we've already been able to see that the routes are going to be the same for the maze. The expectations for that maze are going to be very set in stone. So I even saw like one group before the patch at least bring like 2 frogs in at once or something like that to be able to put something together. So yeah, it's a lot of route options that I'm curious that we'll have to look at how these teams can exploit.
Unfortunately, that fix does close the window on a few route options that we saw from teams, and it's kind of an antithesis to the typical MDI routing where instead of doing massive pulls, you kill the first boss and you're like, all right, next pull is 2 mobs. But it forces the teams to come up with new strategies compared to previous cups. So I'm interested to see what that will end up being here.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It creates some different incentives for which sort of specs you might want to bring as well. We've seen previously in patch 9.0.2 a tremendous amount of diversity between teams' DPS compositions in this dungeon. We've seen boomkins, hunters, monks, shadow priests, mages, of course. The mage is a constant. Everything else was up for grabs, and right now we are seeing that difference as well here between these teams. We have a moonkin on the side of Golden Guardians, who historically they played a lot of moonkin in this dungeon relative to other teams. They played it some of the weeks where nobody else was doing it. Obey Alliance, meanwhile, are opting for that Death Knight instead, which should be a little bit more AoE damage, but a little bit less single target.
I do also... The
DK pet should work. Yeah, the DK pet should be able to pull the mobs through the wall there, so that will be a little bit of an advantage on the side of Obey Alliance. Although, anytime there's some kind of window closing type thing like that, there's always more than just one creative way to get around it, right? So maybe Golden Guardians have discovered another way that they'll be able to pull that extra trash right at the start of the maze.
I think that this comp from Obey Alliance just comes down to like something where there's a comfort perspective that you have to factor in. It's again, it's like I was talking about the thing with Depths. 40 being on that Boomy, that is not his main. That guy is a melee player, and so for him to be playing Boomy is like a pretty big deal for him. And so like whenever he can default back to the DK, it makes a lot more sense in terms of just like comp stuff, especially like he probably has just a lot more success on the DK and a lot more practice and hours and whatnot. Now Golden Guardians and Obey Alliance end up doing very similar pull. They're at incredibly similar times here, just making their way through this area. It is enrage. It is raging. You do have the Enraged Furious thrashes going off. Everybody dropping really low on set of
Skylar, 2% health is going to live there. Shape, that's going to claim his Cauterize and his Ice Block, but also is going to survive. Wow, that was dangerous.
That was very scary, actually.
Skylark's 7% now as well. This is actually so sketchy, but they are going to be able to survive. And just the Manifestation of Pride, the tank is actually usually the person in least danger from just a solo Manifestation of Pride, especially these Vengeance Demon Hunters, who are so resilient to those magic damage pulses. It's not a mob that autos all that hard. As you can see, the anti-magic zone is going to be coming down for Obey Alliance. That is a piece of utility that they have to mitigate a tremendous amount of damage from the Manifestations of Pride. Golden Guardians do not have that option, as they do not have that Death Knight. They will be killing their Manifestation of Pride a couple of seconds ahead of where Obey Alliance are. We will really get to see, though, what the difference between these two teams are on this very first boss. This is a huge check just how much damage they're going to be able to blast into the boss during that damage amplification phase. With Tyrannical being an active affix, it is an open question exactly how much and how quickly they are going to be able to kill Ingramalik, especially because they don't have those Discipline Priests anymore. The Discipline Priests provided that dominant mind control of the Soul Cleavers, which did a tremendous amount of extra damage on Ingramalik, but these teams are now using the Holy Paladins instead, which means that they have a little bit less of that damage. However, the Ingramalik damage phase coming out with the Convoke the Spirits from Lip, they are going to be able to get it down to 2% before that damage amp falls off, and they are going to be able to kill it off before the rechain. Incredible damage coming out from all three DPS players of the Golden Guardians, which includes JB, as they are now going to be getting down onto the next pull here. Let's see if they have a creative way to add some extra mobs to this pull, or if they found a way to pull those mobs through the wall. I don't know how they've done it, but even with that window being closed, they have come up with an answer to the window close. Trees. I thought I saw Lip like jumping as well, do like a 360 no scope in the air type thing. So maybe there's a spot where if you're midair, you can still get line on them or something.
There may be a spot where you can like abuse 45 yards.
Because there's trees down right now, so the trees would have been on cooldown if they were if they tried to use them as pets to pull there as well. And they're also not responsive to like pet commands, right?
You could get them to pull them.
Interesting.
You definitely can get them to pull them, but. Okay, so Golden Guardians going to the right. Different route than we've seen previous weeks.
Yeah, the route changes cup to cup in the maze between these MDI teams. As you can see, Obey Alliance also getting this done. It looks like, so they also are going to be heading over to the right and making their way into the next little room here. Both teams, of course, found that way to pull those mobs. A lot easier for Obey Alliance because they have that ghoul that can just walk through and grab them.
Golden Guardians is pretty substantially ahead, like somewhere in the magnitude of like 25 seconds or so.
And it's tough to see exactly where they've gained this time because they killed the boss only 9 seconds ahead of Obey Alliance. But like you said, I mean, they are really accelerating at this point in the dungeon. They are getting started on this Mistveil Matriarch. Is it possible that there's something explained here by the composition? Is it the Boomkin damage that is superior, or is it just a case of better damage priority into the right targets, better grouping up of mobs and getting started with your damage more quickly? I'm not sure.
Where did Obey Alliance get the extra count?
Interesting.
Obey Alliance has spawned their 40% pride already.
Okay.
Golden Guardian's going to get a third dragon here in a second. Dragons.
Yeah, so both teams are on this dragon mini-boss, and yeah, like you said, there is a count differential between these two teams, so maybe Obey Alliance found a way to sneakily add some extra mobs to a pull
They added
earlier.
them in the beginning, but I don't know where they got them from. Maybe there was like a second Tyrannian Village or something that we didn't notice that there was
maybe,
a full difference.
So if that's the case, then the fact that they only lost 9 seconds to gain that extra count on the first boss split is pretty impressive, actually, and pretty good news.
Oh, look at this. Hold on.
Oh,
really good things are happening for Golden Guardians right now. So I think it was Fired Up. Fired Up was pulling the trash pack while the rest of the group was fighting that Pride there for a second, and then they this is sick. They grabbed the Pride into the double pull. Whereas Obey Alliance is doing... Okay, so Obey Alliance did their Pride with the dragon, and they're doing the double pull by itself. Man, that was sick by Golden Guardians right there. I feel like that was a really good play. And I think that helps them catch up that time disparity that they were lacking a second ago. And it may even slingshot them ahead.
Yeah, this is a really, really impressive pull for Golden Guardians. And that being said,
pride.
Obey Alliance are spawning their 60% pride ahead of where the Guardians are. So I think Obey Alliance still have the slight edge here. I don't know. It's going to be so close.
It really depends. So it really depends on like where you value the prideful buff, right? And like what actually is important for the prideful buff. Because the 60% pride is... Like, where is this actually going to land versus where is Golden Guardian's 60% pride going to land? Like, Is the Golden Guardians getting ready to pull the boss here with this Pride? Is that what's about to happen, I think? Yeah, okay, so that's what's about to happen for Golden Guardians. Obey Alliance are going to have, I don't know, 35 seconds of the Prideful buff and finish off the last little bit of this trash pack before pulling into Mistcaller. We should get like a pretty decent gauge of about how close these teams are, because Obey Alliance is going to be able to pull Mistcaller immediately, where Golden Guardians are going to have to stand there and wait a couple seconds because they're finishing off the Pride by itself. Actually, Lip has run off to the side and has grabbed some more trash for our Golden Men.
So this is going to get them some extra count here. This will catch them up to that 70% count threshold, which Obey Alliance have already reached. But I mean,
like that.
It's impossible to deny here that Obey Alliance have gained a lead some point in the past couple minutes, because Obey Alliance, they are at that count already. I think Golden Guardians might get slightly over 70 from this, but it won't be by much. And Obey Alliance have got some extra damage on the boss. The thing that it will come back to, though, is the thing we always end up talking about on this boss is there a potential for any team to slay this boss between 10% to 0 without it finishing its cast? Golden Guardians have more burst damage by virtue of Convoke the Spirits, so they might be able to make that happen.
Ice blocked on Obey Alliance? Oh my god, Skylark is in a block, man.
Multiple of them are.
It's
an AoE. It's an AoE freeze. It hits Skylark as well. You can see the life grip coming out from Chompy, and that is going to try and save him. But yeah, that Fox connected with somebody. That is a huge time loss and a huge resource loss for Obey Alliance, as they are going to be able to get into this second of 3 guessing game phases, a couple seconds ahead of Golden Guardians, but it's only a couple seconds now that separate these teams, and Golden Guardians have 2 extra percentage points of trash, which might mean they can avoid something like a B pull, some of those floating buzzer stinger things, which what their exact names are completely eludes me as of right now, but the bees, that are pretty difficult mobs, so perhaps Golden Guardians with this extra little bit of count will be able to avoid pulling them.
Gosh, what are they actually called? I don't remember anymore.
We'll find out soon enough. As Golden Guardians now. So let's see. Obey Alliance, they're not even going to try to push
Golden
through that
Guardians has
guessing
CDs
game.
up.
Let's see if Golden
Lip
Guardians
has CDs up.
So Lip has Celestial
Fired
Alignment. Fired Up has his Combustion as well. Going to bait that Vulpin and kite it a little bit. Mistcaller now 14%, and that's the question. Let's see if they can do this. There's the dodgeball cast, and so they're going to start the burn. Here it comes. They're trying to get Mistcaller killed.
They got it.
Oh my god, they've done it. There it is. The Golden Guardians have managed to do something that no other team has managed to do for the past 3 weeks of MDI, which is skip the final guessing game cast, and that has catapulted them into the lead here. They now have more count, and they've killed the boss sooner. They've skipped that entire phase. JB there with a victorious neck crack. You can see easy.
A little bit of it was the power of the chest hair.
Yeah.
and many buckos.
They are going to make their way now. There is the cage that'll allow them to skip this first worm at 72% count. Let's see if they can make these last big pulls work. If so, they have gained so much time, actually, as a result of that guessing game skip. Yoda is going to start here. It's the Reavers, the Spine Maw Reavers, were the mobs I was talking about earlier. I described them as bees, buzzers, stingers, but it is Reaver that is, in fact, their name. As Yoda is getting started with the pull, a lot of damage coming out here. These mobs are, of course, going to rage when they get low as well, so Yoda is going to have to be really careful if that meta falls off of him. He does still have his cheat death available, so that will be, and you can see he's going to have a lot of respect here. He's going to start kiting these mobs as they get low and not going to take those auto attacks. Does take one though, and that's going to chunk him down to 20% health, but they are going to survive this pull. Great job of managing that pull as it was getting low. Yoda really getting into that tank role, which is a new role for him in MDI still this season. Wasn't what he was playing at the start of the season. Really well done, though. You can see he's really starting to build up that familiarity, that experience on the role, and playing it now to a very, very high level, as we're only about 10 minutes into this mist, and we are already about to get started with the final pull of the dungeon here. Golden Guardians just have to finish off this Pride, and then we will see potentially all of the rest of the trash coming into the last boss if they are feeling up to it.
This is going to be a nail biter. Obey Alliance is actually able to put their trash pack down a little bit faster, but they had but they're 2% enemy forces behind where Golden Guardians are, so I wonder where they're going to make that up. Obey Alliance getting ready to pull straight into the boss, doing all of their trash on top of the boss. I actually think that this is favored for Obey Alliance, and this is for one reason. The Moonkin CDs and all of this trash are not conducive to how the Prideful ends up working out. And so whenever you have to compare that to the DK, which is the direct one-to-one comparison, I think you would absolutely rather have the DK in this situation.
Okay, but look at this. Golden Guardians have their lust up in 40 seconds. Obey Alliance have it in 59. So Golden Guardians will reach their bloodlust earlier than Obey Alliance, and I think that could be relevant in this game. I think there's a good chance that this dungeon will end while that lust is still running, which I think means Golden Guardians will get quite a bit more value out of the cooldown. As you can see, Obey Alliance reaching 97% trash. They've dealt with their trash already, fired up, dumping some damage into the boss here. Celestial Alignment about ready for Lip, and they actually have almost all the trash dead here. So once that trash is all gone, Lip will be able to get a Celestial Alignment and a Convoke the Spirits off for massive Tredova damage. We'll switch over to the 2-box now so that we can see those health totals of Tredova. 52% for Golden Guardians, 46% for Obey Alliance. So like you said, Obey Alliance do have a little bit of a lead here. But that lust is ready. The lust is popped for Golden Guardians. That is a big amount of extra damage that they're going to have. Still 13 seconds on the cooldown of Bloodlust for Obey Alliance. Golden Guardians, though, pumping their cooldowns into the boss. 40% on Tredova at 99% trash count. Both teams are going to need to get a little bit of count after this, but the boss HP totals are almost exactly identical between these two teams now. 25 for the Guardians, 24 and falling, 22 for the Obey Alliance team. As both teams are 20%, the exact same time. It's going to be a question of who can quickly and efficiently get that last little bit of trash count. It's going to be the Alter time for Fired Up as he's going to run over and grab those mobs. It looks like they're coming in now. They need to make sure that they can kill this.
Golden Guardians going to kill this boss first, Stratnos.
Yes, they are. But the trash is coming in now already for Obey Alliance. Does Golden Guardians have their trash pulled yet? They only need to kill one of these larvae, I think, whereas Obey Alliance needs to kill multiple. So that is a drawback. As you can see, they're having to deal with that mechanic as well. The mind lock. Tredova dies for both teams. Who is going to get this count first? Who is going to do it? 98%. There it is, 100 for both teams.
Oh my
God!
We'll have to wait for the official time.
What? We gotta wait for that official time on that one. It looks like it would be Obey Alliance, but we need to double check on that one. That is just obscenely close between both of these teams. Wow, here's
and for Golden Guardians!
Really? It looked like Golden Guardians killed their one larva before Obey Alliance was actually able to get their 2 or 3 down. If you just looked at how they killed them, that was... You said it when we were coming into the boss, that was going to be a nail biter, but I think that's probably the closest match we've ever had in the history of the MDI. That was crazy.
Yeah. That is actually ridiculously insane.
Less than 1 second.
20... Okay, so our official timer is that Golden Guardians won. Both of them were at 13 minutes and 20 seconds, but Golden Guardians was a third of a second ahead and did take that victory.
Golden Guardians,
that is insane.
13:20 with 0.02 of a millisecond. Obey Alliance with 0.369 milliseconds.
Nice.
Oh,
man.
No. That... When we talk about Mr. TIRNA side being a close dungeon, and it is just doesn't get much closer than that. I don't know if we've gotten closer to that, Zyro, since like Legion Emerald, the Emerald Nightmare dungeon. Oh my goodness.
Darkheart Thicket. Yeah, no,
Darkheart Thicket. Yeah.
I can't think of a match that was closer than this going back to Legion. I remember there was one that was incredibly close, but 0.3 seconds, man. That's disgusting. I mean, any one mistake, one bad global changes that match, and both teams played perfectly, 0 deaths.
Yeah, most definitely. And we even saw some very impressive, time saves as well, Dranos. We mentioned on the Golden Guardian side, being able to finally skip that final guessing game.
Dude, every single week, whenever we're on Mistcaller, I talk about how it might be possible. And every single week up to now, it never happens. This week, they actually did it, though. You could see the beautiful way that they waited for that dodgeball cast to start, and then they blasted all their cooldowns. They used the extra value from that spell queuing. I don't want to talk about it too much, though, because I'm sure that Zyro has it included in his replay analysis later, so I don't want to yoink his analysis.
No, go for it. I didn't include that.
Okay, well, that's what they did. The thing I just said, so... There's the
analysis.
Sick.
Hell yeah.
Oh, man. Great job, Dranos. Appreciate you, man. What would we do without you?
Presumably cast better.
There are the official times. Feast your eyes upon it. That is, we talk about these teams and how close they've been able to play and how strong so many of them been. It does not get closer to that, and that's also pushing us into a game number 3, Tettles.
Yeah, and JB just tweeted out, Resto Druid time, let's go. Is he actually going to play Resto Druid in Plaguefall? Like, what would be the advantage of a Resto Druid in Plaguefall? Mass Root? But, that doesn't seem that good. Where would you get value out of that?
So you still get your Shadow Priest, right? But you then get a Night Elf healer, right? And assuming you want the Shadow Priest and you want the Night Elf healer, then the Resto Druid makes that happen, huh?
But what? Yeah, that's true.
I mean, we've already been able to see teams get around not having that Night Elf, though, and even in Plaguefall as well.
That's true.
So
it's unclear where you would
just
use 5 meld, but it is a way to create 5 meld and Shadow Priest.
I mean, it's just it's Spiteful Grievous.
Yeah. I mean, it would certainly be nice for the Ursul's Vortex and everything like that. And
yeah,
they already do see teams putting together some obscenely large pulls already and buffing up the mage and everything. But does Ursul's really like move the needle that much on a strategy there, Dratnos?
I mean, Ursul's is powerful. Go ahead, Zyra.
The thing that I'm trying to think is if they found a way to bring the Fungalmancer through the entire dungeon. That's what's going on in my head. You don't need the Holy Paladin if you just have the damage from the mage. So maybe there's some tech you can do with Resto Druid to make that work.
There's a lot of value to be had in this dungeon from both Entangling Roots and Mass Root. And some of it, yeah, like you said, is on that Fungalmancer. But there's actually multiple boss fights where both Mass Root and Entangling Roots are really high value. So perhaps they found a way to make that do some work for them, because honestly, every single boss fight, there is something you can Mass Root for value in this boss, or in this dungeon. Maybe that's something they're getting value out of, as well as the fact that Spiteful spawns it's good against as well. So who knows? Maybe they have found that the utility from that is worth it. I'm excited because, of course, JB, very known for his Resto Druid in previous expansions, so I think it's something that he is delighted to get the opportunity to play. And I'm sure that they've tested out the alternatives as well, so I'm sure they have something up their sleeve here. Or
maybe he's just debating Twitter.
Yeah, maybe he just tweeted this so that we would spend 5 minutes analyzing something really dumb. That's all is a possibility, but I don't think so. I think they intend this legitimately. I'm excited to see what they can do with it.
Maybe they'll be within 200 milliseconds.
I mean, this would also be the first time that we've been seeing Resto Druid this season as well here, Zyro, so there's got to be something big here.
Yeah, I'm just kind of super excited to see what if he actually is playing Resto Druid. I mean, he could just be straight up trolling, but
lying on the internet.
No one would ever do that. Yeah, but I think this just kind of goes to show it's a continuation from last week. Everyone's been kind of looking at Golden Guardians and thinking, man, something's just up with them. And you kind of remember 2 weeks ago they didn't play poorly in that cup by any means. They just got stomped by teams that actually, adapted to the Holy Paladin meta. In both of their series losses, 3 of the 4 losses were to a Holy Paladin comp. So now that they've taken some time to get used to the meta, I would like to see them, be able to make it to Sunday and put a good showing on this week. But man, I mean, going to a game 3 against Obey Alliance in in your first series of the Cup, I mean, that's a good start.
It is indeed, and especially because of the fact that we've had Golden Guardians, really on the bubble for much of this tournament. In particular, titles where they're making it across and they're going to be able to qualify here, but they definitely don't want to be going there as one of the lower seeds.
I mean, they definitely want a really strong performance this last weekend and carry that into the global tournament as well. That's really important that they ride the momentum. And their Mists of TIRNA SCITHE, even though it was so close to Obey Alliance, it did look really good. And they need to also have a pristine Plaguefall on that front as well.
Let's see what they got, as the series is now tied 1-1 as Obey Alliance and Golden Guardians face off right here for the Plaguefall.
There they go, getting their first pulls underway, and let's see what this Resto Druid has in store for us, because Golden Guardians are indeed playing that. And, like I speculated, they do get access to that 5 Shadow Meld composition, so maybe that's what's going on here. As Obey Alliance are under so much pressure on their very first pull, it's going to cost Skylark his Cheat Death, the Lay on Hands, the Bubble, all used by Obey Alliance, and they are still under so much attack. Golden Guardians, meanwhile, looking very healthy. Yoda is going to proc that Darkness, and they are going to get a tremendous amount of value from it.
That's one of the issues with the Darkness Legendary just as a whole. And I actually wanted to bring it up in the Sanguine Depths, Necrotic Sanguine Depths. There are a lot of times where your Darkness procs, and you don't actually want to stand in that darkness. You want to kite a lot. Whereas Skylark going with that Feldev Legendary more often than not, I mean, that one's just straight value, right? As opposed to the potential to kite out of the Legendary. I don't know.
Yeah,
do you have a strong preference, Stratnos?
That's definitely an upside of the Fel Devastation one, is that it works if you have a kiting playstyle. It adds to your damage as well, potentially. But it's not reliable, right? that you can entirely predict when your darkness is going to proc, right? If you do the same pull the same way as Hollow goes down for Obey-Alliance, Chompy is going to follow him as well. The Cauterize, the Ice Block, both used by Shape as well, but there are Grievous stacks on all of their players. 40 is going to be the next to fall. He is bled out there. Shape, very low on health, has that barrier on himself that will allow him to survive for a little bit of time against these Grievous stacks, but this is brutally bad for Obey-Alliance, and that's going to be a huge opportunity for the Guardians. They are now getting started on this first boss fight, and they're able to just make this pull start right now. They don't need to wait to pull the first boss like a lot of other teams do, because they don't have a strict DPS check. They have a Resto Druid, they have Mass Root, they have Entangling Roots, they can manage those adds, and JP can just spend his entire time bullying the adds, preventing them from reaching the boss without losing damage as a damage dealer by doing so. And he's going to hop into that Moonkin form and start blasting those Starfires, tenders the Convoke as well, dealing a huge amount of damage to the, well, actually not that much damage relative to the perhaps what we're seeing out of the other guys. Although, okay, if you look at the damage meters right now, a lot of that is AoE because they pulled the boss in with 20 adds as well, and that was included in the details meter. So JP actually almost all of his damage there is single target. It's not bad. It is not bad that he's putting out so far. It's certainly not Holy Paladin levels, though, as they have that Fungal Mancer now coming under the boss. A little bit...
Plague Belcher.
No! The Plague Belcher is pulled here by JP, and what's the plan here?
Meld. They melded all the...
They've killed the boss.
Oh, no, they killed the boss.
So now now JP is going to meld. He was the only person that was in combat with that Plague Belcher. Somehow
that's good.
Yeah, they've completely annihilated this boss. They've done so much damage to that boss. You can see Lip doing that tremendous thing that Unholy Death Knights do, where they just get so much single target when there is that big AoE funnel going on as well.
Obey their boss right now.
Obey Alliance are having a bad start to this dungeon as 40 and Shape are going down for them once again. They are going to be forced to reset the boss, and Golden Guardians now, they just have to have a clean run from here. They have got such a big lead right now, as long as they can avoid anything comparably bad going for them. And really, this is the area it would happen. This is the part of the dungeon that has broken dreams before. There's that Fungal Mancer. Let's see what they decide to do with this. It's going to be Spell Stolen, and there's a lot of mobs actually with that Wonder Grow buff now. That big mob has it as well as Lip goes down. Lip getting taken out there. They are going to use their Battle Res on him. That's the last Battle Res that they have now, and they're going to try and keep all of these mobs in those exploding Plague Borers. Let's see how that works out for them.
Army of Spiteful Shades now walking at the minutes.
They have the Wonder Grow on them as well, so they will be like one-shotting.
Chompy's dead.
Yeah, Chompy and Hollow down for Obey Alliance and Shape as well.
This is so bad for Obey Alliance.
Yeah, Obey Alliance are building up a death log here that
they're getting spawn camped by the mobs, man.
And things are so rough for them. They really need to find a way that they can reset, get back on their game plan, and start making their way through this dungeon again, because they know that they are way behind at this point. But you've got to play to the possibility here of Golden Guardians having something equally bad go wrong, and it's very important that Obey Alliance find a way to do this and find a way to recover and keep playing the game to their best of their abilities here. But it is Golden Guardians' game to lose at this point, and if you're a Golden Guardians fan, this is so exciting. This is a team that has been consistently getting beaten down this season by pretty much all of the other 6th or higher seeded teams. It's been very tough for Golden Guardians so far, and this is a great team for them to secure a win against and stay in that upper bracket going into Saturday. That is a really good outcome for Golden Guardians, but they have to keep it together here. Plaguefall is a very technically intensive dungeon. The rest of this dungeon is going to be difficult for them, and the Resto Druid may have had its advantages early in the dungeon, but I suspect that later in the dungeon, that's perhaps the area where that Paladin, Ashen Hallow healing and damage will potentially be at its best. So Golden Guardians not quite out of the woods yet. If they can avoid any disasters, they certainly are, though, at this point. They have a huge lead that is probably one medium disaster proof, maybe one large disaster proof. It's not two large disasters proof, though, and that's important. That's important for Obey Alliance to keep that gap that close, and it's important for Golden Guardians to avoid those two large disasters happening.
Yeah, exactly. Obey Alliance is now taken the approach of they're going to start getting their 40% pride here and maybe re-pull Globgrog. I love this.
I think this is the best way to react to the situation, right? If you're used to killing Globgrog Tyrannical with the Pride buff, and that's what you're kind of built around, just go get the next Pride buff, and you can do the trash packs with the Plague Borers and stuff without the Pride, perhaps. You can split trash packs in a way that you can't split a boss fight up. And so they're going to go back, and they'll now take out that first boss with the Pride buff, with their cooldowns having recovered. I think this is a good game plan for Obey Alliance to try and get the train back on the tracks here. But Golden Guardians are running away with this thing. They have those Plague Boars. They pulled a bunch of trash in to explode for free with the Plague Boars, and you can see that huge damage coming out. Do they have a Necrolord on their group? They do not have a Necrolord. Necrolord actually got buffed in this dungeon. The interaction with the oozes, where you had to channel your Fleshcraft on top of them to gain their buffs, but now you just need to walk near them as a Necrolord player, and you'll absorb their, gooey essence or whatever, and get that buff for your group.
It's still pretty not great. It's a pretty lukewarm Covenant buff, especially relative to most of the other Covenant buffs.
It's lower impact. It can provide a little bit of a haste aura, a damage reduction aura, a little bit of a damage proc, but turns out that just playing the preferred Covenant for these specs tends to be worth more. If anybody, it would be like Lip, who could potentially change, but honestly, the Venthyr for Lip is so valuable. On that very first trash pull we saw into the boss, right, the first boss room, that is something where Venthyr was actually providing him a tremendous amount of value, and Necrolord really wouldn't have as much. Necrolord, more of a single target Covenant option for the Unholy Death Knights, as they are now making their way over to the second platform. Barrel getting thrown in. Let's see what they decide to do with this Plague Bomb, whether they decide to cleave it down, ignore it. How are they going to survive this? They don't have access to Barrier, they don't have access to Devotion Aura, so they're going to need to use defensives on everybody. JB does have an Iron Bark to deliver to the squishiest member of the group if necessary. So let's see exactly how they choose to distribute these options, as that Plague Bomb is getting close to its explosion. They need to be a little bit careful here as well to not aggro that congealed slime and get it in near the boss, as more things are going wrong on the side of Obey Alliance. But here comes that Plague Bomb explosion. Anti-Magic Zone, Bear Form, Ice Block, Dispersion,
Bark
Skin, Iron Bark, all committed here by the Guardians. But that is going to be enough to allow them to survive the explosion. And their plan is likely to skip the final explosion.
Obey Alliance is wiping again, man.
Globgrog.
Why is there a Plague Belcher the size of Globgrog on the screen?
There are 3 Globgrogs on the screen that I can see for Obey Alliance, as they are trying to kite here, but Skylark has so many stacks, and Globgrog's health is going the wrong direction, Tettles. It is gaining health as those slimes are reaching it. There's another big heal, 32%, as Raid Boss Globgrog claims another victim there. Obey Alliance up to 13 deaths here. They are getting hard stuck behind this first boss wall, and this is just such an unbelievably brutal catastrophe that has befallen Obey Alliance here.
So whenever I write my weekly write-ups, and people always say that Plaguefall is not that hard on Tyrannical, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to reference this from literally all the time from here on out.
The thing is, it's every single boss in this dungeon has ways that that it can go
all
like
bad.
that.
Yeah, they're all really hard.
They're all tough Tyrannical bosses,
Yeah.
and that compounds the difficulty because it means that you don't get to Bloodlust all of them, right? If a dungeon has 1 or 2 really hard bosses, you just get to Bloodlust those ones. But if a dungeon has 4, you don't get to Bloodlust all 4.
Is this the Resto Druid hack right here?
Yeah, this is the Resto Druid strategy. This is the skip that we saw Echo utilizing Bop and 1 Shadow Melt for. They bopped the tank pulled it all, ran off to the side, melded while the rest of the non-Night Elf group snuck through. Golden Guardians are going to be using 5 Night Elves to skip, but things have gone wrong for them. Lip died during the skip, and they weren't able to actually meld off this Defender of Many Eyes. So they're going to have to kill this Defender by itself. They are going to have to get the res onto Lip here. If this were a closer match, this would be potentially costly. This is the kind of thing where if they were neck and neck with Echo up until this point and they got to this position, this could be what we identify as the reason that the game went bad for them. It's not going to be like that this game, though. This game, this mistake is a drop in the bucket compared to the ocean of mistakes and disasters, really cascading disasters that have happened for Obey Alliance.
Like the corruption?
It really is reminiscent of when you had that corruption effect equipped, and you just die a lot, because that is very much what's happening for Obey Alliance. But wow, look at this Ring of Frost there for Golden Guardians. Great usage of the ability.
So the ambushers will leap onto like their threat target, the tank, more often than not, and do like a stupid amount of damage whenever they land. But Fired Up pre-drops that Ring of Frost and it makes the ambushers leap straight into them. JB showing off that Resto Druid utility, knocking those stealthlings out of their channel. Really
Ursul's Vortex
there
as well. It's going to be used here to prevent these Spiteful Shades from causing too many issues for the Guardians there. And that's going to let Lip stay in melee range of the Pride, so getting a little bit of extra damage as well. Even though JB himself is not contributing too much damage as that Restoration Druid, whenever you Ursul's Vortex and the Ursul's Vortex is going to give your Death Knight some extra melee globals, that is effectively damage that the Resto Druid is bringing, right? It doesn't show up on their name on the details meter, but it is damage that happened because of them. So it's important to keep that in mind for the Guardians here, as JB, you know, playing that Druid, playing that utility, he's really going to be trying to enhance everybody else's damage rather than doing that Paladin thing of saying, no, you know what, I'm taking your damage away. Give me that power infusion, and I'm the DPS now.
It does say a lot. It does say a lot about Shadow Priest that you don't see Void Eruption as their main offensive cooldown. Instead, you see Power Infusion.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whereas you have DT and Army coming in from Lift right here. You saw those pop in tandem, and Combustion.
And look, JB actually getting a sizable burst with Convoke the Spirits on the boss as well. So pretty notable there, and he's going to get stunned as well, so lose some damage as a result of that, but that's fine. Here come those Assassins, and this is something that previously teams were able to just press Mirror Image and break out all the Assassins instantly. That interaction has been removed in patch 9.0.5, which means that they actually have to go on a little bit of an adventure, tag all of those Assassins, but you can see Golden Guardians able to make very short work of that little side quest, get those mobs revealed, and then get them destroyed nice and quickly before they provide too much pressure and do too much damage to the rest of the group there. JB actually has that Poison Dispel as well, which is nice. I guess, so that is a nice thing that the Druid does bring. I think Paladin does as well, Poison.
Oh, Poison?
Yeah.
They do.
I think so. They do Disease at least, yeah. It's Shaman that doesn't do Poison, right? Yeah.
Okay.
And Priest, perhaps. Yeah, so JB does have the ability, though, to dispel that nasty tank, Poison stab from Dominant Venom Blade, which does do quite a bit of damage. It's not too dangerous with this set of affixes. Yoda actually going to take the stun there from Lip as well. Not the end of the world, though, as that boss is dead.
Obey Alliance killed the first boss at some point, but I didn't see when.
That is a heartwarming story of success and overcoming adversity. As Obey Alliance, they managed to eventually take down Globgrog. And, they're going to work their way through this rest of the dungeon, but there is really no coming back from a gap of this magnitude. Golden Guardians would have to have so much go wrong for them here on this last boss. It's the kind of thing that, they would need to wipe 3, 4, 5 times or something to the last boss.
The weekly no-lever Margrave Stradama for it to go bad.
You know what? It's happened to me, but I don't think it's likely to happen to the Golden Guardians.
How did that happen to you? Can you tell?
Week 1 in this dungeon, was pretty weak. You're doing keys a little bit above the level we should have been. It's a hard boss. I don't know what to tell you. As you can see, Golden Guardians managing those Spiteful Shades. They're doing a great job here. You saw they baited Ichor Bileflesh to teleport back up the stairs by keeping an alive mob up there. He'll always teleport to the farthest alive mob that is still there. So you can see that's going to keep sending him right back up to the very top of the stairs. And that's going to prevent him from hanging out in all those Spiteful mobs and potentially for being right on top of the boss when he dies.
He also notably teleports at 66 and 33% health break points. So you can force him to teleport at specific time. That's useful for Sanguine. I mean that's not exactly the most useful for Spiteful Grievous, but that is pretty useful for Sanguine, knowing that he will step at 33 and 66%. Yeah.
As they are going to get started with this last Pride. This was a prideful mob that we saw primarily skipped by most teams in the last patch, but of course skipping has gotten a lot less reliable. Invisibility potions are not something that works with any degree of reliability against prideful skips anymore, so most teams have opted to instead just say, you know what, we're going to kill them, we will get damage pots instead, and that is going to be our strategy here. It's a little bit slower in theory, but in practice it removes a massive point where things went wrong for teams before, and it gives them this incredible damage spike and survivability boost on pull for these tough bosses. Margaret Strom is a little bit of a weird one because she usually phases before you have time to get value from your entire prideful buff, and then you're just kind of hanging out in this intermission with the damage and healing buff, wondering what you're doing with your life, but it's really unavoidable in this position.
Yeah.
You can see there, yeah.
They're only... Okay, so they actually do get the full first reign. What do they have put on? Okay, so for their second phase, they're actually going to have a pretty sizable amount of CDs. The third one is where you're going to be pretty scared, I think. So Lip has He's going to have DT come up in a couple seconds. He does have the army available to him. Fired Up does have Combustion. Shaq has his CDs as well. So they're able to like really commit on one of the phases. I suspect it's probably going to be this second one if I had to guess. But
yeah, cooldown usage on this boss and cooldown assignment is interesting because you do want to try and get full value, and you can see
this is literally
there's the army, there's the combustion. The combustion will be back for the last phase as well, probably. The army will not, though. That is the full commitment of basically everything that they have here. They will still have a little bit of damage for the last phase, but it's mostly being used here.
They probably don't get a rain. Okay, never mind. They are getting the rain here. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing, though, that Resto Druid is pretty good at healing, right? Everybody's taking quite a bit of damage, but they're all hanging out inside an Efflorescence, and he is able to provide a lot of healing to the entire team.
It's grievous. I mean, it is kind of rough.
Yeah, we had an Alter Time coming out from Fired Up that let him top himself entirely.
Obey Alliance is dying to some more stuff. Some weird stuff's happening for Obey Alliance. Golden Guardians have looked really good in this dungeon, though. 2 deaths. This is a really good run.
Yeah, and you know what? Obey Alliance looked really good in the other 2 maps, but for I missed they lost by a handful of milliseconds, right? 367 milliseconds between them and just winning the series outright right then. And you know what? This run has looked really, really rough for them. But at the end of the day, sometimes you have those bad runs, and what's important is that as they get sent down to the lower bracket, they're able to kind of recover from that and continue their way through the series, because we've seen teams win this tournament from the lower bracket before. It happens, and Obey Alliance are absolutely of the caliber to make that happen. So even with that disadvantage, that is something that I'm looking for from them. But it is all about the Golden Guardians right now as they finish off Margrave Shigama, taking the series, and they are going to be advancing to the upper brackets.
There it is, Golden Guardians, fist pump, very big excitement, maybe even a sigh of relief for the team as they take that victory, move on into the upper bracket, and are in a lot more comfortable of a position, let me tell you, Zyro, for tomorrow.
Yeah, and I mean, for the 2nd straight cup now, Golden Guardians has, found themselves in the upper bracket on day 2, right? Kind of taking baby steps, getting back into it, getting more confidence, and it's really showing for them. And unfortunately for Obey Alliance, I think what we just saw was kind of it was a reaction to playing an unfamiliar team comp, right? Like, whenever you're practicing for these dungeons, not too often are you really practicing for the worst case scenarios. So, if you wipe to a boss, you just say reset and go again. So you don't really have the practice of pulling a boss without Prideful, without Lust, without the buffs on your mage that you're used to having. So when you get your second big slime on the first boss, you're like, wait, what do we have for that? Oh, we're just gonna have to kind of, you can see it goes horribly wrong, and they kind of ended up throwing their bodies at the boss. But you know what? Obey Alliance, they still looked good in the other dungeons, and I think they'll be able to come back in the lower bracket pretty strong too.
Yeah.